Hello and welcome back to yet another exciting week on the stock market. In this week's episode, I will look into the question if money wasn't real, give an update on the news, give an update on my portfolio, and finally try and answer some questions which I have received from the audience. So let's start by addressing the question if money wasn't real. The reasoning behind me wanting to talk about this question was due to a TED talk I saw within the week. Even though it's back from 2015, I simply think it's even more relevant now than it was back then. I will of course include a link in the description below to this TED talk, but let me just try and highlight the points from the show. So the experiment is that a dad is watching his 3 kids playing a game of Monopoly just outside the rules of the game. He then tries to replace the Monopoly money with real money to see if the kids will change their behavior and play the game differently when they know that they have a chance of winning some real money. So not surprisingly, 2 of the 3 kids changed the way they played the game to be more strategically to increase the chances of winning. The reason why I think this is really more relevant today is that most kids rarely see physical money, since most transactions are done with credit cards, phones, or other clever technology ways. The downside to the technology is that they don't see the limited amount of money you have. Hence, they do not understand how to budget their money or simply understand the concept of money. The comment that really stood out for me here was when one of the kids says, "I want to have a phone as well as you so I can buy stuff." The valuable lesson that can be learned here is that you need to understand the concept of money, and the earlier you do, the better off you are. It's certainly much better to learn it in a game of Monopoly than when you have a huge car loan. And from a personal experience, I can tell, once I was in gymnasium, one of my classmates had to destroy their credit card less than 2 months after they got it because they overspent, and that was people at the round of age of 18. So I just wanted to highlight this TED Talk since it's still relevant even though it's more than 4 years old, because we are seeing that more and more money are being digitalized and more transactions are taking place with credit cards, phones, or other means of technology instead of physical cash. And the downside is some people might not learn to understand the concept of money before it's actually too late and they are in debt. We all know people who are behaving reckless with their money. We have all seen someone with that kind of attitude. Let's take a closer look at the news, and if we start by a positive news, then you could see 13th of April on Market Watch, I will leave a link in the description below, that Goldman Sachs has abandoned their bearish outlook for the economy and believe that we have already seen the bottom. In fact, from the bottom, 23rd of March, we have actually already entered a bull market since we're up more than 20% from that bottom. And according to Goldman, that should actually be the bottom due to this outbreak. If we then take a closer look at a not so positive news, according to IMF, we have entered a global recession of -3% of the global BNP. And I mean, 3%, perhaps to you it doesn't seem like much, but just to put things into perspective, since I like to compare numbers, how much do you think that the global BNP felt during the last crisis in 2008 and 2009? If you came up with the number 0.1%, then you are correct. So according to IMF, this is actually 30 times worse than the financial crisis. If we want to make it a bit more visual, we can also take a closer look at the IMF webpage, where they have made this world map of real GDP growth. And as you can see, there's a lot of countries with red, meaning that they will have a growth of less than -3%. For instance, if we take a closer look at Denmark, -6.5, that is well within the line of -3 to -10 as our central bank guided. We can also take a closer look at Germany and see -7. That is also well within the guidelines from the IFO Institute, which I mentioned in the last episode. And of course, I will leave a link in the description below to this webpage. And these days, we of course still have to look into this virus situation and see how this is developing. So this is the numbers from last week. Let's see how they compare with the numbers for today. So when we look at the numbers for today, we see that 550,000 more has been confirmed with the virus during the week. Around 52,000 people more have died due to this. So we are still seeing that the numbers are expanding, but we are far better off than doubling every 7th day. So hopefully this means that the countries, as I mentioned last time, has peaked. There is no guarantee for this, but when we look to the numbers, it at least somehow starts to seem better. But I still think that it is way too soon to make the conclusion about how this will play out. And while we are on the topic of this virus, one thing that has caught all media's attention this week is that Donald Trump has stopped the funding for WHO since he believed that they were trying to protect China's interest and were too slow to react and too slow to declare this a pandemic. I will of course leave a link in the description below to an article for The Guardian, so you can go and read for yourself. So once again, there was a lot of news out there this week. Now, let's take a closer look at my portfolio and see what has happened within the week. Some of you might have the question, why did you have a red circle for today's episode when your portfolio is actually up $100 in value? There's a very clear answer to that question. I use this system with a green circle every time my portfolio goes up in value and a red circle every time my portfolio goes down in value. But I do that before I add extra funds into the portfolio. So the only reason that my portfolio is up $100 in value this week compared to last week is because I have added additional funds. And I think that it would be cheating to add a green circle, because every time that I would have a loss, I could simply just add a green circle. And that wouldn't be fair. And fair should be fair, hence the red circle, since my portfolio is actually down in value compared with last week before additional funds is added. That of course leads to the next question. What have you done to the portfolio? I have added 2 new holdings to my portfolio. I have added Cardinal Health, $500, and Realty Income Corp, also $500. So let's take a closer look at the 2 companies which I have added. If we start with Realty Income Corp, if you are not familiar with Realty Income Corp, then I know that you are not familiar with the Dividend Growth Investing Society in the S&P 500, since this is the monthly dividend company. It is truly a fan favorite amongst dividend growth investors. So let's go to the About section and see what they're actually doing. So, Realty Income, the monthly dividend company, is an S&P 500 company dedicated to providing stockholders with dependable monthly income. Our monthly dividends are supported by the cash flow from our property portfolio. Over the past 51 years, Realty Income has been acquiring and managing freestanding commercial properties that generate rental revenue under long-term net lease agreements. Or, in other words, this is a real estate REIT. So now we know a little about what the company is actually doing. So let's see the top 20 tenants which they have, which is also available on their webpage. So here we can see there are a lot of familiar names like Walgreens, 7-Eleven. I mean, basically all of these 20 are big companies. One thing that you might want to be aware of here is how many of these companies are forced to be shut down due to this current situation. So for instance, LA Fitness might not have too many customers these days since they are forced to close. One thing that I would like to point out here is to go into this portfolio occupancy, just to see how good are they actually at renting out their properties. And you can see the history goes back to 92. And if we start by taking a look here at 08 and 09, we still see that they had an occupancy rate way above 95%, even during the last financial crisis. So, despite the fact that they have some companies which will probably not make any money in the foreseeable future, I still think this is a good buy, and the stock has actually also been beaten down from around $80, and unfortunately I missed the opportunity of buying it when it was just in the start 40s, but I still think it was actually okay to add it at around $52. And of course, you shouldn't buy a company without taking a look at the financials of the company. So if you for instance go to Yahoo Finance and go to the balance sheet, there we can see how it actually looks. So total assets 18.5 billion, total liabilities 8.7 billion, so the assets more than covers the liabilities. So just to quote Peter Lynch here, it's really hard for a company to go out of business if it do not owe any money. Oh, and the reason why this is 18.5 billion and this is 8.7 billion is that the numbers are in thousands, just if you didn't know that as well. We can of course also look at this stock through Seeking Alpha, since that is one of my favorite pages to use. We can see that the stock has declined heavily in value since the outbreak. Unfortunately, I didn't buy it here at 42.5, but I still think it's okay to buy it now at 52. If we take a look at the dividends tab, we can see that the dividend is more than 5%. It has been growing the dividend for more than 25 years, meaning that this is actually a dividend aristocrat, since it has been increasing the dividend for more than 25 years. If we then take a look at the dividend yields, we can see when we are buying now, that is better than the 4-year historic average. So that is also a positive in my book. So all in all, I think it's a fair time to buy this. So if we do the same exercise for Cardinal Health, we can go to their About section, and we can see here the company provides clinically proven medical products and pharmaceuticals at cost-effective solutions that enhance supply chain efficiency from hospital to home. Cardinal Health connects patients, providers, payers, pharmacists, and manufacturers for integrated care coordination and better patient management. Backed by nearly 100 years of experience with approximately 50,000 employees in 46 countries, Cardinal Health ranks among the top 25 on the Fortune 500. So a big company with a long history, with a lot of different business streams. If we do the same exercise and go in and check their balance sheet, again using Yahoo Finance, we can see the total assets is 40.9 billion and total liabilities 34.6 billion. So still more assets than liabilities, but not as strong as we saw for Realty Income Corp. And again, if we go into Seeking Alpha and start by looking at the stock chart, you can see that that has also dropped severe. And unfortunately, I didn't buy at 41, but I still think it's a decent time to buy at around the 50, which I did. You can see that the PE ratio is below 10. If we go to the dividends, you can see dividend yields 3.76, 15 consecutive years of growth. If we go to the dividend yields tab, we are still above the 4-year historical average, and of course we would have liked to be up here and bought it at the 23rd of March this year, where almost all companies would have been the best buy so far this year. that's just how it is. So that actually concludes the update regarding the portfolio for this week. Since I haven't sold a company and I haven't received any dividends, and remember, just because I add a company into my portfolio doesn't mean that it meets the criteria or requirements for your portfolio. I am simply just showing what I am doing and why I am buying the different companies which I believe in. Now, let's turn to some questions from the audience. So last week I received a question about how does a stock move up and down in value? And instead of including it in one of these regular episodes, I have made a special episode. So if you're not one of the 37 people who have already watched it, I will encourage you to go in and watch that video, because there you will find the answer to your question. So that concludes yet another exciting week in the stock market and an episode from the Lazy Money Game. So remember to like, comment and subscribe, and feel free to ask your questions. I will try and answer them to the best of my knowledge. And until I see you next Sunday, bye!